every iota of energy we make is important. India actually is in infancy in the wave energy as well as tide. Please don't compare it with today's solar. You compare it with, solar of 3 decades ago. Right now in India, solar and wind have taken off in a big way. But fortunately, somewhere in I think 2018 or 19, MNRE, especially after we became, after I managed to get India to become a member of the OES TCP under in IEA, MNRE has made or declared ocean energy also to be a renewable. What this means is the same renewable purchase obligations which solar and wind undergo, they can also avail of that. So any ocean energy developer can also avail of that. So in that sense, we are lagging behind, but slowly but surely we are coming forward. In fact, they just last year they have floated a call for only all kinds of renewables, including ocean energy, because the COP26, huge promises have been made. So to meet those deadlines of, gigawatts that we are promising, I think every little bit of energy has to be, somehow we need to go forward for that. World over right now, the wave energy and the tidal energy are more popular. That's because in the northern latitudes, the wave and tide climates are much more severe than closer to the tropics. So India actually is in infancy in the wave energy as well as tides. Also the reason is because the tidal range in India is quite low except for the Gulf of Khambat and in Sundarbans. In the northern latitudes, there are some places with very high tidal ranges, and there are a few working plants, one in South Korea and one in France and other places, and in Canada as well. However, due to environmental reasons, somehow at this point in time, the tidal range plants have been slightly put on hold. But the hydrokinetic turbines, or the marine hydrokinetic turbines, which actually work on the velocity of water that's on tidal streams, those have become quite popular, and there are a lot of nearly commercial plants in Europe and in the US today. In India, in NIOT, we have made a small demonstration hydrokinetic turbine, and right now, because of other activities, it is temporarily put on hold, but we are all ready to scale it up. In the countries close to the equator, we have another large ocean energy form which is called OTEC, that is the Ocean Thermal Energy Conversion. And India is blessed with a lot of a long coastline and a huge EEZ with warm tropical waters. And OTEC is also a baseload form of energy, and therefore in the countries close to the equator, OTEC can be a real good form of ocean energy to pursue. So this was the genesis of the first ever LTTD plant in the world in Kavaratti in Lakshadweep. Okay, that was in 2005, and we just were doing it for the first time with absolutely no help from anybody abroad. It was a completely not only Indian thing. NIOT did it. We have ourselves stood in boats and deployed the pipeline and everything. It became a big success. The health of the people improved in Kavaratti. Subsequently, 2 more islands in 2011 in Agatti and Minicoy also we did that. And then the Lakshadweep administration has now funded us for 6 more plants. So 6 more plants. I mean, this has become it's environmentally friendly. There has been absolutely, see now 2005, that is about 17 to 18 years since we put up that plant, there has been no environmental impact at all. So that's what we want to do. We have to have technologies which have no detrimental environmental impact. Okay, and secondly, what is needed for India is the O&M, or the operation and maintenance, has to be very simple, and we should not have to invest or have lot of skilled people required to maintain any of these plants, especially in remote locations like the islands. So these plants are robust. There are very few components and they don't need very great maintenance. Okay, so even 8th standard failed kids actually started running the Kavaratti plant, and the islanders are managing it. See, when the community owns it, they can look after it, and then they can look after it well. Okay, and when we have made it easy, you don't need higher qualifications to be able to run it. So the local people, feel they can do it themselves, and that's how it has become really successful. And this success has been seen world over. And this is the ocean thermal gradient, but at slightly shallower waters, up about 500 meters water depth, or 300 to 400 is also enough. So that's why the world thinks that if they can handle thermal desalination so well for 2 decades, they should be able to do OTEC as well. And that's what we are doing right now. The project I'm currently leading, and which is like really in the we are in the thick of it right now, that will have an OTEC power generation, which will power the pumps required for the desalination. Okay, so we are not promising additional power to the to the island or something, but we will try to do diesel displacement in this. That is, we will use the OTEC power to make the water. It should be a self-sufficient system where again they will get clean water, but without using their diesel generators. I mean, all our projects till date have been the first ever things, but everything is like indigenously done. We haven't imported any items. We have designed indigenously, made them, fabricated everything locally, and then they have made an impact on the society. And that's how I think engineers, our job is that to take from the drawing board to the field and then make it beneficial for the society at large. So I think largely we have done a lot of good things. Right now, my priority is the OTEC powered desalination, and I think if this succeeds, this can really break the barrier and make OTEC big in the country. So I'm waiting for this to happen and succeed. We have warm climates, so there is a lot of what we call biofouling. Okay, so and corrosion. Here the corrosion is rampant. I mean, if you don't take adequate care, the components start getting corroded in the sea very, very rapidly. Okay, plus because of the warm climates, biofouling or like things start growing on the offshore components very, very easily. It's very hard to take those off. And these are like serious problems, because in the long term utility of the plant, we have to factor all these in when you do the designs, right? So these are some things which are additional to what would happen in the European latitudes. Apart from that, for smaller devices, it has been okay for us. We have been using small fishing vessels and smaller boats and everything to do that. But when you talk about larger sizing, like OTEC and all that, for instance, now in the OTEC desalination project at Kavaratti, we are going to have a nearly 4-kilometer pipeline. Okay, nobody has deployed such a thing before, and it's going to be done in an extremely remote island. As it is, marine infrastructure will have to be. We are trying to work out the design also to see if marine infrastructure is available within the country, because otherwise it becomes very expensive if you have to mobilize from Singapore or Malaysia. Vessels are marine vessels are very expensive. So the designs have to also be done. That's why we are like struggling to do the design in such a way that we'll be able to do it with available Indian infrastructure. Now, if you have to have a scaled up OTEC plant, for instance, we have got a detailed project report done by one of the industries a few years ago. The shipyards that India has do not have what we call a sufficient draft for very large vessels. Okay, so for instance, we had a design of a semi-submersible which we got done. India has never built a semi-submersible or spar till date. For this, you need huge marine offshore handling facilities as well as shipyards to be able to cater to large, very huge vessels like this. So these are some, and then again, just because we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have sufficient trained manpower to build these things as well. But then there are some, it is slowly improving. Now we are having more and more ports coming up and things like that. So I think things are improving, but at this point in time, yes, there are challenges. The perceived risks throughout the international market is that the offshore environmental conditions, can a device withstand storms? Can it survive? So survivability is the biggest, one of the biggest challenges in the design. So actually that's one of the things I'd like to say in the Indian context. See, in the northern latitudes, like a 6-meter wave or a 7-meter wave is a matter of an everyday kind of occurrence, okay? So designing there is very, very difficult. It's challenging. It's not impossible, but it is very difficult, and that is why there also it has taken longer to reach megawatt scales right now. But in India, actually, the reverse is true. We don't get that kind of high waves here. To put it in a nutshell, see, when you talk about viability, technically, because the environmental conditions are slightly more benign than the northern latitudes, it is easier to design here and make it indigenous. So then comes a question of, but the amount of power that you harness, the magnitudes are lower than the northern latitudes. So then how do you make it viable? And I think we can, because in India the labor is cheaper, and if you make everything indigenously, the costs are a lot lower. So that is the challenge that we have to, I mean, we have to break that particular one barrier that is there, how to make it viable. Though the power actual generation may be slightly less, but please remember that it will be easier to design in Indian waters, because the extreme conditions that we see are one-off and not a daily occurrence like in the northern latitudes. I feel personally that off-grid small energies are as useful as, everyone talks about megawatt ranges and techno-commercial viability, but in India today, off-grid units have as much use as a large grid-based power plant. So we have on the way made a product called the wave-powered navigational buoy. Okay, till date, lot of the ports and harbors have been importing these navigational buoys, and they are mandatory because as the ships enter the channel, you need these marker buoys. Now this one that we have developed uses wave energy to power the lamps, okay. In addition, we have done this, we have demonstrated it off Ennur port, and they have actually put it in their channel now because they are so happy with it. What we have done is a value addition where the wave and the current and wind is measured at that buoy, and that comes directly to their mobiles, okay. So the management of the port can actually see the weather and which way and guide the vessels appropriately. So they are very happy with the product. We have transferred it to the industry right now. One more thing that the group has developed, okay, it's a seawater lantern. So this is a little lantern which we have developed totally in-house here in our lab, if you want to see the lab. It basically, it has just got 2 electrodes, and you just take seawater and pour in it, okay. It lights a lamp which can act as a torch. It can act as, like, we have made it in such a way that you can even hang it up and the little child can study, because most of the coastal areas, many times there is no power and kids find it very hard to study. So the children can study, plus you can take it like a torch in the darkness. And the other thing that we have done in that is it can also charge a mobile. So this is being seen as a great thing for disasters, because what happens in a disaster is, first of all, the communication dies and people can't even communicate to your near and dear ones. With this, you can actually, make a call and say, I'm safe or I need help. At least you can charge the mobile and, do that. And this is a very small, recently we have transferred this technology now. I have read a lot about the evolution of solar, not only in the country, but world over. It used to be actually 45 rupees per unit at the time when it started, okay. After 3 decades, when it has reached 2 rupees, after a huge amount of subsidy that has been given in the country, we should not be comparing a 25 rupees per unit ocean energy device, okay. I mean, we need to give its time for evolution as well, but if we don't start today, even 20 years down the line, we'll be still talking about, working on ocean energy and trying to make it viable. Okay, but unless you, it's like a catch-22. Unless you do it, you won't be able to get there, you see. So this is what I think policymakers need to understand, that please don't compare it with today's solar. You compare it with, solar of 3 decades ago. So first of all, there has to be a general awareness, so that the nexus that is formed for promoting only these kind of technologies can be broken. Second thing is, we should talk in holistic terms, and even the policy makers should look at these technologies from the positive aspects which are lacking in some of the earlier technologies, so that when it gets looked at in a holistic manner, probably then the approvals for funding will become easier. See, only when you are getting large funding can you show and demonstrate a technology offshore, because offshore technologies inherently tend to be more expensive, because there are more risks associated with offshore, and even perceived risks are there. There are some risks definitely because of the environment. Actually, we are the only institute which is working on ocean technology. And the people that we have hired here also, we have been encouraging women to join as scientists here. And I'm happy to say that the few scientists that we do have here who are women also participate in the offshore activities, and many of them they are able to sail and contribute. So the number of people that we hire, of course, again, in the STEM, as you know, the women are much lesser than, we are still in lesser in numbers. But those who have joined here definitely are participating, and I hope with the information dissemination that can be done, more and more women, I think, should be able to participate. And once they take it up, I'm sure they have that willingness, and we are all very capable, and we can definitely do it. A lot of times people are not aware that such things are going on. So first of all, I think knowledge dissemination is very important.